Hey guys, it's Ryan again. Doing another vlog. Think, learn, and be vulnerable. And today I'm going to talk about fantasy. A good friend of mine who I was hanging out with recently, he talked about how he doesn't like to watch Netflix or movies or anything like that because he feels like, hey, I could be doing something more productive with my time. And I think he's right. But I do get it. Um, I've already made a vlog about how I think I'm wasting my time by watching sports. But I would push back a little bit on watching movies, and specifically fantasies are actually worthwhile. And here's what I'd say. One, definitely escapism, not being in this world. That's a good thing. Getting away from this world for a little while. We all need to do that. We all need to get away from our normal lives. Two, magic. The idea of magic has been around for so long and continues to be around even now, even though we live in such a technological world. And the reason is because it, one, it inspires us, right? It inspires us to what could be and what could be done. Um, but two, I think it taps into like our imagination, it taps into the mysterious, it taps into the fanciful, the magical. Um, I can't look at the stars and not have my heart leap a little bit. I can't imagine myself on an adventure without my heart springing a little bit. Not all those who wander are lost. I mean, the Lord of the Rings is it's fantastic, you know, and it just goes to show how the smallest of us can have the biggest impact. And that's what these fantasy movies, epics, books, Dungeons and Dragons, um, video games, I feel like that's one of the things that they teach us, is the ability to be an underdog and still make a great impact in this world. The ability to change the world for the better in magical ways, in ways that you never imagined you possibly could. I think fantasy has that benefit. It keeps us reaching for more. It keeps us going for an ideal world. It allows us to believe that there is something better than what we have. If you don't have the fantasy, you can't reach for that fantasy, and then you become complacent because then the real world is all you have. If you have no fantasy, you can't turn that fantasy into your reality. You can't strive for more. But three is a little thing called verisimilitude, which is where the writing or the movie or the thing that you are consuming feels very real. And there are a lot of experiences, human experiences, that a lot of people just haven't had. If you grew up in the deep South in a predominantly white neighborhood, it's hard to imagine what the plight of Black people is like. If you grew up really rich, it's hard to imagine what it's like to be poor. If you grew up free, it's hard to imagine what it's like to be a slave. If you grew up with running water and faucets, it's hard to imagine what it's like to have to go to a well to get your water. If you've always had access to clean bath water, it's hard to imagine an entire family bathing in the same bath water and having to save it. If you've always had shoes, it's hard to imagine walking across the ground with bare feet. It's hard to imagine making your own clothes because you have to, and there's no other way. But if we read a fantasy novel, if we watch a fantasy movie, if we consume fantasy media, they can present to us experiences that we would never experience ourselves, but have the verisimilitude to allow our minds to put ourselves in those positions. And now we feel more for those people going through those experiences. Now we can imagine ourselves having those experiences. And we can sympathize more with people that are going through the difficulties of those experiences. You know, I think of like Game of Thrones, where Grey Worm, or Worm, excuse me, is, you know, him and Melisandre are starting to feel stuff for each other, but he's got no penis. His junk is gone. And, but they still feel stuff for each other, you know? And I still have working junk, so that's good. But I can imagine what that feels like. I can imagine how emasculated he might feel. And I can imagine what it feels like to completely dedicate yourself to this one particular cause, and how he is feeling like more than himself for the first time. And he's feeling autonomy for the first time. And he's feeling himself being trusted for the first time. You know, and then he feels love for the first time. So even though they took away his manhood, he's still a man. He's still a human. And those are the sort of things you wouldn't necessarily think about unless you had fantasy. You know, would we be inspired to be like Bilbo and carry our own proverbial rings as far as we do, as far as we need to do? I don't know. I hope so. You know, what is our Mordor? What is our ring to carry? You know, having those stories allows us to imagine that we can succeed despite all odds. It allows us to see what it's like for other people without physically being there. You know, if you read a story and there are kids in cages in the story, well, it's a lot easier to care about kids in cages being separated at the border, which is happening. If you've never been in a culture that has a lot of militaristic features to it, reading a book that has a really strict military in it might help you see what it's like. If you've never gone on a grand adventure and fallen deeply in love and feel stuck in your life, maybe a fantasy novel inspires you to get out there and do something about that. It's a lot easier to feel what it's like to be downtrodden if you've never been downtrodden by reading and consuming fantasies. I think though that is the real value of fantasy, is we can feel what it's like to be like somebody else who has it way worse than we do, and feel something for them because we experienced that fantasy. So, think. What do I think? You know, I think that fantasy is an integral part of being human and being creative and having fantasies and expressing those fantasies. I think is really, really important and something we need to do. Learn about yourself, learn about your own fantasies, learn about the things that you aspire to, learn about the things that inspire you, learn about the things that seem awesome and you wish you could do. Maybe you can do it. Maybe fantasy is the thing that gets you to do it, you know? And vulnerable. Be okay with your own fantasies. Own them. Enjoy them. They're yours. They're nobody else's. You don't have to make an excuse for fantasizing. You don't have to make an excuse for dreaming, for imagining, for wanting something fantastic. Don't we all? Don't we all want something fantastic? Don't don't we all want something amazing and magical and incredible to happen in our lives? I mean, life is short. Jesus Christ. You know, my life is halfway done. Hopefully not, but probably is. But I still have fantasies. I still have dreams. I still have things I want to do. You can do those things. Your fantasies are possible. You just got to make it happen. So indulge them, nurture them, grow them, feel them. You're not wasting your time because they're not real. It's not a waste of time to want more in your life. It's not a waste of time to reach for the stars. It's not a waste of time to feel your heart leap, to let your heart leap when you see the beautiful, when you are affected by art and creativity and fantasy. It's a wonderful thing. Embrace it. All right, guys. I'll see you later.